Hi, everybody. Good morning. Really sorry for coming late. Right, so let's start immediately. All right, so today we're going to be talking about some JavaScript concepts. All right, we're going a bit deeper. All right, so we'll talk about the JavaScript execution context. We'll talk about the call stack, some of the stuff. All right, so let me share my screen. Share my screen. Okay. All right, JavaScript execution context. Just give me 2 minutes. Let me sort out this thing. So I'm going to stop sharing. Let's sort this out. So I'm sharing. Sharing. All right. Okay, so this is going to be a very important concept, and I'll need your full attention. If you know anybody that's any of your body, this cohort, just reach out to them that will start it. And I think it's important that they are around. All right. So what's JavaScript execution context? So it is simply a way for us to understand how our codes run in JavaScript. All right. So I remember during the last class on Tuesday last week, yeah, when we were asking questions about what's the difference between var, what's the difference between const and let and all those things, right? Those questions are going to be answered even in this topic. All right. So let's see something. All right. So this is JavaScript file. I'm going to write a function, and I'm going to say print grid. All right, or let's just say grid. Okay. Console.log hello. Right. And then I'm going to call this hello. Okay. But because there are some things I want us to look at, I don't want it to just execute. I want to pause the execution at some point. I want to use the debugger keyword. All right. And I'm going to use it here to debugger. All right. Okay. So what happens when you run a JavaScript program or a JavaScript file? What happens is that an execution context is created. All right. So by default, the first execution context is called the global execution context. That is an execution context that must be created. All right. That context always gets created. Okay. So let's use Excalibur to visualize stuff, right? So you have JavaScript file here. This is your file, right? This is a JavaScript file. Please confirm if you can hear me and be sure of that.
Yes, we can.
I hear you.
Very good. So you have a JavaScript file here, JS. And then we have codes inside of it. Let me just copy this. Let me copy these codes here. In fact, without code for now. So this is a JS file, right? Immediately this file is encountered by an interpreter, a global execution context will be created. So just this empty file we've created now is going to cause a GEC to be created, which is a global execution context. All right. So you see that this is empty, it's an empty file. We've not written anything inside of it, but it's going to create what we call the global execution context. All right. And two things will happen during this phase. Number one is that this keyword is going to be created. So you must have heard about this keyword. All right. So we'll start mentioning it very soon. I'm going to talk about it in detail. All right. So the this keyword will be created first. And this keyword will be made to point to the global object, which is window. Window. All right. Made to point to the object window. And then the second thing that will happen is that this entire file is going to be scanned. All right. So our interpreter will scan from top to bottom of this file, right? And then if it sees any variable, all right, any variable at all, or function declaration, all right, it is going to take note of them, okay? Well, in this case, the file is empty, so it sees nothing, then it just, that stage is going to pass. That stage is called the creation stage. So the creation stage. So during the creation stage, that's when this happens. And then all variables are going to be taken note of. So they're going to be given a space in memory. I like to use that word because it sounds technical. All right, so they're going to be given a space in memory, but there's no variable. That stage passes, and then the next stage is going to happen called the execution stage. All right, the execution stage. And during the execution stage, that's when all executions happen. All right. That's when all executions happen. Okay. So in this case, we do have code here. All right. So let's copy the code and examine how this code is gonna run. So I'm gonna get rid of the debugger first before I copy. And I'll put it back. Let's just examine that code and see how it will run. All right. Permit me to separate them so I can differentiate properly. Okay. Let's do it like this. All right. So now what happens is that this code you are seeing now, it lives in the global scope. Is following me. Now, there is global execution context. There is global scope. What is the global scope? The global scope is simply anything that lives outside any block or function. Very simple. If you have a code that is not in a block or that is not inside the function, that code is in the global scope. You have a code that is not inside any block or inside any function, that code is in the global scope. For instance, this function is not inside any block. The code inside this function is in the block. But this function declaration itself, this function is declared on the global scope. This function call happens on the global scope. All right. So let's go through the execution context phase again. All right. When the JavaScript file is encountered by the interpreter, the global execution context is created. And during the creation stage, this window, which is the global object. Then the next thing that happens is that every variable or function declaration that is available in that scope, all right, is going to be taken note of, right, and put in memory. Do we have a variable or function declaration in this scope? Yes, we do. It is the greet function, right? So what happens is that this greet function is going to be taking note of greet. All right. So there's something called greet. Sorry, not a call. The name of it is going to be taken note of. All right. And that's when it gets a space in memory. All right. So it points to a reference. All right. We remember this stuff that we used to do. And then it now points to the actual function in memory. Okay. Just stay with me. Now points to the function func in memory. Okay. So let's just assume this is the function. Okay. So this happens in the creation phase. Now, this entire code has been scanned in this phase. All right. And then we just saw this, and that's the only thing we're able to take note of. During the execution stage or the execution phase, that's when all executions happen. All right. So when you have something like this now, great. All right. It is going to be executed during the second phase. All right, which is the execution phase. That's when all execution happen. All right. So let's update our code again to include variables. So let's write a variable here. Say let's age equals 12. And then let's see something that happens. All right. So what happens now is that let age equals 12. During the creation phase, JavaScript interpreter encounters this JS file. And what happens? It scans through. All right. So at line 1, it's going to, so first of all, it's going to create this, right, and attach this to window. So we're repeating this enough for it to stick. And then the second thing that happens is that it's scanning now. So let age equals 12. It encounters a variable named age. So what will happen is that you have age, but at this stage, age will point to undefined. All right, so age will point to undefined. All right, so that's what happens. All right, and then it keeps scanning for other variables, but of course there are no other variables except this function declaration. So you have the function declaration, all right, created. And then that phase is over. So it goes to the next phase, which is the execution phase. All right. And in the execution phase, let me use green. And in the execution phase, it executes the grid. No, sorry. All execution happens, right? An assignment operation is an execution. If you remember clearly, in one of my videos, I told you that this is called a function definition. What's the meaning of function definition? It means you both declare the variable and assign a value to it. If we break it down, we'll have two things happening here. Let age, which is declaration. So variable declare definition. So if you break it down, you have two things happening. The variable declaration and the variable definition, which is the assignment, the variable assignment happening. These are two things we wrote here at once. All right. So when this is being checked during the creation phase, what happens is that let age is a creation stuff, like you are creating the age, like let there be light. You have created that let age, the variable is available. So that is going to happen in the creation stage. But the assignment is an execution. You are now executing a new instruction by saying age should be equal to 12. That happens during the execution stage. So what happens is that this is gonna happen here. All right, this happens here, then this happens here. So this is global execution context. All right, so let's visualize this in our browser and see if what I've been saying is correct. All right, so let's see. I'm going to add my variable. Let age equals 12. And then I'm going to refresh. All right. So this has been paused. So what happened? I'll pause it at the beginning so that you see that before anything runs, it's going to pause. So you see the state of our code at that point in time. All right. So I'm going to pause it, refresh. And so you see our program has been paused at line 1. And then we're going to see what's happening here. So you see it is showing age value unavailable. This is an update. Before now, what you see is undefined, but what's actually here is undefined. All right, that's what's represented by value unavailable. Okay, if I bring up some of my old videos, you'll see that this used to show undefined, but I think they've upgraded the way they represent that value. All right. So what happens is that this is the creation phase now. This is the creation phase now. All right. And we have age. You see that it recognizes that there is age here. And then it says that it is unavailable. If we click on global, you see that there is window. Are you seeing window here? This is window. All right. So this, we said this keyword will be generated and to point to window. All right, and that is this you're seeing here. Okay, so where is our function? We check now. After age is assigned undefined, our function greet should be there, but currently we can't see our function. All right, this is something I would explain later, but our function is somewhere here. So let's look for it. This is greet, and it properly points to the function. All right. But take note, all this is happening during creation phase. No execution happens during creation phase. So I can prove that to you by playing. So I'm going to play to go to the next, resume. And then it sees that in line 8, this is going to pause. All right. It has paused at line 8. And what do you see here? Age is now 12. This is the execution phase happening. Age has now been given the value 12. All right. And the next thing that will happen is that the line 8 currently. So if I play, it will go through to line 9, and that's when this execution will happen. All right. So if I play, check your console now, there's nothing in the console, right? Go back to sources and play. And you see that we've come into this function. We are now at line 4. So I've come into this function, line 4, and we'll pause there. So before our console log is going to even run, I've paused the function call. And if you go to console, nothing has happened. All right. If I collapse this and show you, you see that we're in the greet function. All right. So you see, look at this arrow. This arrow tells us now that we're inside the greet function. All right. Before now, we were at anonymous. Okay. I think if I go back, yes. So see, we're at anonymous. So I stepped out of the function. All right. So that is it. Let me refresh again. We'll start from the beginning. It paused at line 1, showing us the initial state of everything. So our code has been scanned, and it saw that we have a variable called age with no value at this point, because this is the creation phase. If we check our global object, you're going to see the greet function there. There's an explanation for that. If you don't want this to happen, which is hoisting, that's hoisting. You can do let greet equals this. So we use function D function expression here. And if I refresh, you'll see that we have our greet and our age. They are both undefined at the beginning. All right, they are both variables. So they now work the same way. All right, so you see age and greet. All right, they are both undefined at this phase, the global execution context. All right, so anonymous is the global execution context, and that's the context that is active in the stack at this point. All right, so if I play, you see that at this point, age has been given its value, because this is the execution phase now. Age has been given its value, 12. Greet has been given its value, which is its function, the function that it points to. All right. And then if I play again, greet is now being executed. So if you see, we're now in the greet execution context. All right. And if I play, the next thing that will happen is line 5 is going to be executed, and we'll see it in the console. So line play, line 5 has been executed, and hello has been printed to the console. Okay. So that is global execution context. There are two kinds of execution context that we have. We have the global execution context, and we have the function execution context. The global execution context and the function execution context. So before I proceed, I'm going to explain the concept of the stack in JavaScript. I'm going to attempt to explain. I hope that makes sense. So let me go. All right. So let's see. When we talk about stack in computer science, we're talking about something that uses the first in, last out principle. The first in, last out. All right. So it's not like a queue. So stack is going to be can be likened to something like a queue. They are both lists, but for queue, you have what is called the first in, first out. So imagine yourself in a bank queue. All right. The first person to enter the line, assuming everybody is sane and everybody will behave themselves. All right. Because computers do behave themselves. What you tell them to do, that's what they do. All right. So if human beings behave themselves, what happens normally is that the first person in the queue should be the first to go out, followed by the next, followed by the next, followed by the next. The last person to enter the queue should be the last to go out. All right, that's the queue technique in programming, and the queue technique exists in programming. All right. So when you have tasks, the tasks are going to finish in order in which they started. I think printing uses that queue technique, printing. So when you say print jobs, I think so. Yeah, I'm correct. Yeah, supposed to follow that technique. All right. But then in JavaScript, our JavaScript execution uses the stack. Okay. So what happens in the stack is that it's like it's like when you put things in a closed container, a container that has one end, one open end, all right? And then you put things inside of it. Let's say you put balls inside of it, and then you want to retrieve the last ball. What happens is that you first take you want to retrieve the first ball that you put inside the container. You have to first remove the last, second to last, and then like that until you get to the first, okay? So the first to enter that container became the last to come out. That's what we mean by first in, last out. You are going to see this philo. All right, when you see philo, this is what it's talking about in data structure and algorithms. All right, philo, first in, last out. Okay, that's what the stack uses. So the stack would look something like this. It makes sense, therefore, that the stack should look something like this. Lord help me draw this. All right, and, something like this, or with an open end. So let's see, do I have an eraser here? Mm, okay. Let's see. All right, let me do this for us. Okay, this is everything. All right, so let's try to draw. So okay, then all right. So this is really stack. Yeah, let me group. Okay, at least I still was able to get it done. All right. So this is our stack. Okay. So what we could do is that we could put things inside of them. So assuming this is our JavaScript file and it's running, what happens is that the first time it runs, the global execution context is put in this stack. All right. So which is the global execution context, GEC, is put in this stack. All right. So that's the guy you're going to see inside first. And then it is going to indicate that the active man here is the global execution context. That's the guy running at this time, okay? And then what happens is that the global execution context stays in the stack. And if it encounters another context, like in this case, when greet is executed, the greet function is going to be popped in the stack. Right? It's going to be pushed into the stack. So let's do that. D and the C function execution context. All right. The function execution context get put in the stack, and you see that it will move to this control will move to it. Okay, because that's now the active context being executed. And after the lifespan of this, because this has just one line, all right? So please hold on. Okay, yeah, so the function execution context is now the active man. And then after its lifespan, which is going to expire very soon because it has just one line to run. Immediately after running this one line, it gets popped off the stack. That means it has outlived its lifespan. All right, so it's popped off the stack, poof, and destroyed. And then control flow goes back. Oh, control flow, well done. Control flow goes back to GEC, which is the global execution context, keeps running. And when it is done, when it gets to the last line of the global execution context, and there's nothing more to do, what you see is that it pops the GEC out of the stack. That means your program is done executing. All right. So let's visualize this one more time and see if we're going to appreciate it or to make sense. So what I want to do is pause at the global execution context first. And then when we enter the function execution context, we want to also pause, right? And just before we leave, we'll also want to pause the program, okay? And then when it comes back to the global execution context, we want to pause. So I want you please to be attentive because this is not just theory. This is something that will help your debugging game. Like, it's just, it will improve it a lot, all right? So let's see. I'm going to refresh. Please follow me. At line 1, this is paused. So paused at line 1 means that all these guys have not been executed. All right. They might have been scanned. All right. That means it has gone through the creation phase. And so the program knows, very interesting here, right? The program knows that there is age and there is grade variables, right? But it hasn't executed yet. It just simply scanned through the code to know, okay, what are the things that, I have at my disposal in this program. Then it knows everything, all right, but they have no value at this time, okay? So it pauses here, but let's be concerned about the call stack. So you see this call stack, you can expand and, all right, collapse it, all right? So this is the call stack here. So at the call stack now, what do we have? We only have anonymous, which is the global execution context. It's called anonymous in the browser, okay? So if I take you back, you see that GEC is the guy, executing at this point. So you see the arrow here, you see anonymous in the stack, okay? Now, if I press play, what will happen is that it's going to run, at this point, it's going to now execute line 2, all right? But then there's no debugger pausing, all right? So it's going to go ahead and execute line 3. No, it won't execute this guy because it will skip it. That's a function declaration, so it's going to skip it, all right? and then to come ahead to line 9 and to pause just before the greet function is called. And when I play, it's going to go inside the greet function. All right. And then it's going to pause at line 4. And if I play, it's going to run line 5. And then it's going to pause at line 6 just before this is removed from the call stack. And when I play, guess what? It's going to come back to line 11. So if you recall, the last time we were in the global execution context, right, it was line 10 that was run. And when you invoke a function, what happens is that the function body is going to run. All right. So from line 10, we went into the function, we ran line 4, line 5, line 6, and now we are out of it. It's not going to come and start, executing on line 8 all over again. No. It remembers where it was called, right, and goes back to that line and continues from there. All right. And that line is line 10. So it continues from line 11. All right. And pauses before it is popped off. All right. So let's refresh and see. So line 1, we have age, grade. That's creation phase. All right. If I play, it goes to line 9. All right. That means it has run line 2 and line 3 to line 8. All right. That's why we can see that we have the value 12 assigned to the variable and the function assigned to the greet. All right. And then if I play now, notice at this point we are in the global execution context. But immediately my function is invoked, what's happened? We have moved from the global execution context. All right. And we are now in the function execution context. Okay. Function execution context, which is the greet function. All right. And then it's going to run. So if I play, it has paused, still in the function execution context, which is greet. And finally, if I play, it's going to come out of it and pop it off the stack. So if I play now, so you see that it's no longer here anymore. I told you immediately the function has been run from top to bottom. It's going to be removed from the call stack. And then control flow has gone back to the global execution context. And finally, since after line 11, there's no other thing to run, that means the global execution context is done. It's going to be popped off the stack. All right, so you see now the stack is empty. Okay, so it starts with an empty stack, puts in the global execution context in the stack. If there are any functions encountered, the functions are going to be put in the stack in that order. All right, and then finally they will be popped off in that order too. All right, and lastly, your what is it called now? Your global execution context is popped off the stack. All right. So all this might sound very theoretical at this point, but trust me, very soon it's going to come in really handy. All right. So let's talk about some simple things a bit so that you can connect the dots. All right, to an extent. Why is it that if you say, so I'm going to go back and use var. I'm going to use var for age. Let's just use var for age. So why is it that if I say console.log here, age, you see that, let's refresh. You see that there is no error. It doesn't give you an error. It just says undefined. All right, why? Why is that even possible? That is possible because of what I just explained to you. All right. It's possible because let's pause at here. Let's pause here. In fact, let me just pause at the top. All right, so if I refresh, you see that we have grades here and age is somewhere inside global. So if I go here, you see age. And age is what? Age is undefined. All right. This is called hoisting. All right. Oh, these guys, I see how they improve. Makes sense. Nice. So this is hoisting. This is the concept of hoisting. All right. The program is aware that you have a variable called age, but at this stage, this is the creation phase. So age is going to be undefined. So the program knows, and then it tells you. So when you call age at line 2, it's going to tell you, well, age is undefined. All right, because you've not gotten to line 3. This has not been executed. So age has not become 12. Age is simply undefined. So that's what it tells you. All right. And well, that looks good, but it's quite naive. I think it's a naive way to approach the program. All right. So this hoisting, what it does is that it's going to make the variables available to you before the line where the execution of that variable happens, or where the assignment of that variable happens. So if the variable is in the script at all, right, what will happen is that you have access to it, but the value you are going to get is going to be undefined. That's the simple concept of hoisting. It makes that variable available to you. But if you try to access it before its execution, it's going to tell you that, well, the value is undefined. So you can make use of it, but the value is undefined. All right. That's the simple thing happening there. So I'm going to delete, because I know that some learners, when they see too many codes, they get really confused. So let me delete every other person and let's focus on this var and let and const issue. All right. Let me just put my code here so I don't lose it. Okay. I'm gonna bring it back if we have time. Pray we have time. All right. So we have console.log here, and we have debugger, and then console.log here. Okay. So it's going to pause here. When I play, it's going to run this code. It's going to run this code, and it's going to pause here, and then run this one. Okay. So I'm going to refresh, and you see it has paused at this point, and age is undefined. So at line 2, if I play down at line 2, you see that it's going to print out undefined here. But notice that I am accessing age before line 3. So if you're looking with the, if you're looking at the program with a naive lens, all right, what you would think is that, why am I able to access age before line 3 when it is declared? What you don't understand is that something else is happening behind the scene, which is the concept of execution context. All right. Is that there's what is called the creation stage, and there's what is called the execution stage. All right. During the creation stage, the program knows about everything in the file. It knows about every variable in the file. All right. So if you ask for anything in the file, the program knows about it. So with your own, naked eye as a programmer, you are saying, oh, this is line 3. But the program says, no, I know about it. Because during the creation phase, I've taken note of every variable created in the file. All right. So if you ask for anything that exists in the file, as long as it is hoisted, I'm going to give you the value, but the value is definitely going to be undefined at that point. But during the execution phase, if you ask for it, you're going to get the real value. All right. So if I go back to here, at this point, we're seeing undefined, right? This is creation phase. But if I play, all right, you see that we're now at execution phase because it now has its value. The value has been assigned to it, 12, right? So at this point, we have undefined printed when we try to access it at line 2, because that was the creation phase, all right? And we've not executed the line that gives it a value. But at this point now, if I play and we console log age, you see that we now have 12. Okay. So that was not really a bug per se. It wasn't a bug. It was the way JavaScript worked. So that's why you see some JavaScript authors argue online, and some will say, oh, JavaScript is this, JavaScript is that, JavaScript behaves anyhow. A developer who really doesn't know how JavaScript works, it's the developer that will get frustrated and start cursing JavaScript online. JavaScript works in a way. So JavaScript is working the way it was meant to work. So if you know, I know there are some mistakes in the language, but you have to know how it works. All right, so that you can guide your conversation.
Hello, C. Hello,
Hello.
C. Can you?
Yeah, I can hear you. Who is speaking?
Okay, Daniel. Daniel. So I dropped a question on the chat. I wasn't sure you're going to ever see. I wanted to ask, when you say
Sorry,
quite
Daniel.
a lot,
Sorry, Daniel. Yeah, I'll come to it sincerely, so I don't lose my train of thought.
okay, that's all right. That's all right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll come to it. Okay. So yeah, so you need to be that kind of developer who knows what is happening, right? And then you can defend the language. There are people who say, don't use var. var is gone. You don't use var anymore. But I can use var in my programs and it won't cause any problem for me. Why? Because I know what is happening. I know what var does, right? I know what const does. I know what let does. Okay, I can use it. All right. So somebody like Getify will say, use everything in JavaScript, but know what they're doing so that you know when and when not to use it. Somebody like Douglas Crookford will say, there are some good parts. So you see the book like the JavaScript, the good parts. So use the good parts, forget the other part. All right. Me, I um I would say that I take a bit of both of them, right? I could use anything I want, but then I think about it. Like I have a complete data set to make my decision. That's what I'm trying to say. All right. So I could say, oh, I don't want to use var because it's problematic and I leave it. But I could say I want to use var because I know it won't cause a problem the way I'm using it. All right. There are other concepts in JavaScript that you're going to encounter that some people will say don't use. And you find out that if you use them, sometimes it makes your life easier. But it depends on you. If you know how they work, you'll be able to actually use them well without causing any problems. All right. So var is one of those guys. Okay. So this is how JavaScript works. And yeah, that is it. Now, where does let and const come in? So this is where I'm going to attempt to answer Daniel's question. All right. So where does let and const come in? Let and const, right? They were brought in JavaScript to solve the in quote problem that var has, right? var is allowing you to access age even before age is defined. So it's like you have a variable. Let's use this analogy now. So you have a variable that has been created but has not been given a definition, right? You have not told us what that variable is in essence. You just declared it. Now all these variables are available, but you've not defined it. All right. So should you be able to use such a variable? It's just like,
Sorry, T. We have another lecture for 12. Maybe you help us talk to the person taking us.
okay. What course is that?
Is Git.
Git. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, let me borrow 5 minutes from Gitman. Let's see. Guys. All right, so yeah. All right, so I'm going to quickly answer that, okay? All right, so let and const, right? They were brought into the language to say that, no, just imagine like a manufacturer, a car factory. They've created a car spec, but they've not given it life. They just say, oh, there's a car we're making called, every creation happens 2 times, all right? But I'm not going to that now. They have the idea, all right? They've created it's not physical, but then they have the prototype, they have everything in their documents, and they've not manufactured it, all right? So that car is there. Can a user now come and buy that car and start using it? Like, you can have access to the car, but you can't use it. Like, you can buy it in advance, but you can't use it. Do you understand? Because it doesn't have a definition yet, a physical definition or a useful definition. All right. It's just there. That's the difference between variable declaration, when you just say var age, for instance, like this. All right. And when you really define it. When you define it, it now has a useful value. All right. So the JavaScript guys now, they came up with, oh, okay, that's a very valid argument. So to restrict usage of it before the line where it is actually defined, all right, to restrict usage, what they now did is that you use const. So if you use const or let, either of these two, it's not going to allow what we call hoisting. All right, it's not going to allow what we call hoisting. Okay. In fact, yeah, it's not going to allow hosting. So if I try to do this now at this point, let's play. We're gonna play. You see now there's an error here. All right. It now detects that you're trying to use something before it is actually giving essence. All right. var would have allowed you, because why not? This thing exists. All right. But the value of it is undefined. All right. Yeah. So var is the way you create variables, and hoisting will be supported. But there's still another guy, all right? If you create function declarations, hoisting is still being supported. So when you create function declarations are hoisted. Very important to know that function declarations are hoisted. That's why if we come here now and say, let's remove our debuggers. In fact, let me leave it. So if I come here now and say function hello, all right, and then save, for refresh, you'll see that that function exists. But where do we see it? You'll see it here in the window object. Hello. All right. So it has been hoisted like this. You can actually access it before the line where it is declared. You can actually access it. All right. So that's it. We're going to talk more about this because this concept is not really that easy to understand. But we'll talk about this during the next class. And in the next class, I'm going to use a visual tool for us to really understand what's happening. I'm going to introduce us to a visual tool, and then we will plug in a code inside of it and see how the code runs. And you're going to have a picture of what happens internally, all right, when you run your code. Okay, so I hope I was able to answer Daniel's question in some way. We are out of
Yeah, it was helpful.
Hello, T.
I feel like I'm
Yeah.
going to
Hello,
argue
Mr.
for several times.
All right. You're welcome. So
Hello,
somebody is
Mr. T. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes. Can you recommend like a content online, a document, something we can read as regarding this?
Okay, I've done that severally, right? So the best content I know on this.
The one you recommend on variable, we did. It was helpful.
Yeah, so this is listening and this is execution context. All right. So this is 1 and this is 2. So you can read on both of them. Yeah, this is still JavaScript. NodeJS is still JavaScript actually. So this concept is a JavaScript concept that will be useful when we even start NodeJS. So we're not starting NodeJS yet. Okay. All right, guys. So those are the links. You can copy them, bookmark or whatever. So I'm taking more than I asked for. I'm gonna let you guys go now. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy.